Morning Year 10. We're going to finish off our week by finishing off our paper 2 section A. So you're going to have completed the whole section by the end of today, which is really, really good. It's 30% of your language GCSE that you'll have finished, so brilliant. And hopefully you'll end up feeling quite confident that you can understand how to tackle each question. So today we're going to go through the synthesis question, which we haven't done since year 9, so I'm going to spend a bit of time on that for you and remind you of all the niggly rules that is required. And then we're going to look at the comparison question, which you did do last week. So I'm hoping this is just a chance to build on the feedback that I gave for that. Please do watch that video if you haven't, and a chance to show me that you've made some improvements, and then also build your own confidence with it. I think what I'm tending to see from communications with you is that you're not as confident as your work would suggest. Like, your work is better than you think it is. So please be reassured that you are, from what I've seen, from what you've sent me, you are on the right lines, absolutely, and you're going to do really well on this. Like, I was actually looking at resources that I've used over the last few years and thinking, you don't need that, you don't need that. You guys have got a really solid understanding of the difference between language and literature. You really get how to respond to these questions, so please feel confident that you are doing this correctly. Okay, so let's get started. Can you write the title, the synthesis question, under with your notes from last time? Keep it all together. So I'm just going to start off by outlining all these silly niggly rules that you need to remember with this question. If you remember the rules, you can't go wrong, really, because it's a really straightforward comprehension question. It's the same as question 1 and 3. The only difference is that you're not just writing in bullet points and you've got to use 2 texts. So the key thing is that you can only get 1 out of 4 if you only cover 1 text. So you might write down 4 valid points from text 2, but you'll only get 1 out of 4 because you've not used text 1 at all. This is a synthesis question. That's the whole point of the question. It's all about checking to see if you can draw information from 2 places and put them in, and write them in 1 place. So you'll do this all the time in real life. You might, when you go to buy a car, you're going to read different specifications of different cars and you're going to weigh them up and you're going to think, this one's got this, but this one's got that. That's exactly the same skill that this question is testing to see if you can do. So it is a valuable skill in life. And if you don't look at both sources, then you're not synthesizing. All right, so just make sure you cover both texts. It does not have to be equal amounts. You can have 3 points from one text and 1 point from another text, but you must have at least 1 from each text. So let's assume you have at least 1 from each text. Then you're then into the second category where you can be getting 2 or 3 out of 4. The only difference between 2 or 3 out of 4 or 4 out of 4 is your range of points. So as long as you've got 4 points, you can have 4 marks. If you've got 2 points, you can have 2 marks. If you've got 3 points, you can have 3 marks. It's that straightforward. Now, you can see in every box there that I've got supported with a quotation. Now, when I first started teaching this specification, that's what I taught. And when I marked the paper, which was the first year we all did it, a lot of students use quotations on this question, and that was kind of expected. However, as you'll see in the model examples later on from the exam board, students have tended to move away from using quotations on this question because it's just a synthesis question. It's just a comprehension. They're not asking you to analyse or evidence. So we're going to imagine that with a quotation is in brackets. If you have the time, you can support your answer with quotations. If you don't have the time and you're struggling for time, you should have about 15 minutes left by the time you get to the synthesis question. 4 minutes to do this one, and then about 11 minutes to do your comparison question. It's just about you making that decision in the moment. And if you don't include quotations, I am confident that you can still get 4 out of 4. You'll see that in some model answers later on. It's just very nerve-wracking for me as a teacher to say you don't need quotations. So it's up to you. That's honest. That's my honest kind of. That's everything I know, and I'm happy for you to take that information and make a decision about what you think's best. My summarising advice would be, if you've got the time, put them in. If you haven't got the time, then just don't, because you're likely to get the mark anyway. All right, so just to highlight to you, danger. You will lose marks if you don't identify which text the quotes are from or your points are from. All right, so that's really important. And as I've said, if you only deal with 1 text. So that goes for both comparison and synthesis. If you don't say what text quotes from, you won't get the mark. I feel like I've said that about 50 times to you now, so hopefully that's fine. All right, so this is the synthesis question from the volcano paper that you've got from 2018. So just take note of the bit at the top in bold. To answer the following questions, you must use both texts. So it's very clear, the modal verb must, there's no option. And obviously by this point you will have read both texts and you'll have done a 10 marker on both texts. So you should know them quite well. You should already be able to kind of think straight away. Hopefully if you've been able to retain in your memory key things from the text, you should hopefully be able to straight away think, I need that line, or that happened. Okay, so let's just break this down. Using information from both texts, explain briefly in your own words what happened as a result of the volcanoes erupting in Angier and in Iceland. So you can see why I'm different about the quotations. In no way there does it ask you to evidence or does it ask you to analyse. You're just explaining in your own words briefly. So I'm just going to kind of highlight what each of these means. You can jot this down if you want to. So briefly means briefly. They are not looking for masses and masses of writing. Own words means you need to be pinning down what happened using your own vocabulary. Do not just copy out the text, which is where, you know, you couldn't just copy out a quotation. You'd need to say something about it. So please make sure you use your own words. Don't copy the phrasing. And then they will always give you a really precise focus. And again, that's part of a synthesis skill. You know, if someone asks you, I don't know, which footballer's got most likely to score in the next 3 weeks, you know, it is back on now, isn't it? Hopefully. So as a result, you're not going to go and look at all the stats and focus on, you know, number of assists, etc. Well, you might look at assists. Sorry, that's a really bad example. You're not going to look at how many, you know, defensive positions they've been in or how many goals they've stopped. This is a really bad analogy. I should not have picked football. But the point is, you're going to zoom into number of goals scored previously and maybe also assists. So that's what you need to focus on. And it's the same here. They just want you to look at something really specific. What happened as a result of the volcanoes erupting. So if you write points that aren't relevant to that, you're not going to get any marks. You've got to really focus and underline and highlight what the question's asking you for. Okay, and then we know that we want the specific to places. I just want you to stress that actually this could be used to formulate answer. You could actually start with in Angier this happened, in Iceland this happened. So that's an alternative in this case to in text A or in text B. Okay, right, so this is your general formula, but as I said, the quotation is optional. So which text says, what does it say what happened in your own words, and then a quotation tagged on the end. You literally just write that 4 times for 4 out of 4. So it's very similar to question 1 and 3. The points don't need to be balanced, as I've already said. So this is the question where, oh, sorry, I'm jumping ahead. So just make sure you've got that formula down. Okay, so this is a question where you can also gain marks if you say that both texts say the same thing, as long as they do say the same thing. So for example, both texts say whatever your point is, and then a quotation from each. Again, they're now optional, and then you'll get 2 marks for that. Okay, so if you remember, I did tell you this is the question where you can get 4 out of 4 marks in one sentence, and I did see that done, and I did give it 4 out of 4. So both texts say this, and both texts say this, 4 out of 4. Okay, do not write more than 4 sentences. Can you put that in a bubble and highlight it and put stars around it and look at it all the time? Like, please don't put, if you're writing more than 4 sentences, you're wasting your time in, and it's already a strict timing exam. So 1 mark per sentence, remember, and you know, don't feel that you need to complicate it. If you can see 4 individual points, write them down. Don't feel like you need to go looking for these both text say points. You know, see how much time you've got. Okay, so I want you to have a go now at that question. I'm not going to sorry, one sec. Yeah, right. I'm going to go through now a 2 out of 4 answer. Now it's up to you if you want to have a go at this first and then go through the 2 out of 4 answer with me, or whether you want to you want still a bit more clarity about what you should be writing, in which case carry on listening to me now for another few minutes. So either pause now if you feel confident that you can do it, and then don't pause yet until, if you want a bit more guidance. So this is a 2 out of 4 answer from the exam board for this question, and you can see that there's only 2 ticks, and that's why it's got 2 out of 4. So the student's written, in Iceland they said the volcano hasn't erupted since 1823. Well, that's not relevant to what happened as a result of the volcano, so that's a waste of time. But it's now happening as the sky changed colour and there was a smell of sulphur in the air. Well, there was a smell of sulphur in the air that did happen as a result of the volcano erupting, so that gets a tick. Okay. In Angier, they found out because the volcano started to get louder and louder. Well, that's not quite what happened as a result of the volcano, and it's not very focused, is it? It's focusing on what people said and what people find out. It's not focused on what happened. Everywhere was completely covered in smoke. Well, yes, that did happen as a result of the volcano erupting, so that's another tick. Okay, so it can be something as straightforward as that. In Iceland, this happened and this happened. In Angier, this happened and this happened. That's all you need to write. Okay, so if you haven't already, can you have a go now at getting a 4 out of 4 answer down for me? And then, so pause now, and then I have got a full mark answer for you on the next slide. Okay, so this is your full mark answer, and I've got the mark scheme for you as well, so you can double check if you've got 4 out of 4. So in Angier, a volcano erupted 25 miles away and caused a tidal wave. Yes, it did, so that's a tick. Which has demolished the town of Angier. Yes, it did, tick, because they both happened as a result of the eruption. Where the writer Peter Sandrick was, no need for that, can cross that out. Consequently, many dead bodies have been found as a result. So you don't need consequently and as a result because they both say the same thing. But yes, there have now, obviously people have died, so that as a result, so that's a tick. So we've got 3 marks now from one text. So we need to make sure there's at least 1 mark from the other text. And of course there is. In Iceland, the volcano has erupted near an ice cap where a farmer by the name of Half Johnson lives. The eruption meant he had to leave his farm for a short time. Yes, it did. Tick. The volcano hasn't caused any fatalities, luckily, but the rare event has caused an extraordinary show in which tourists have been attracted to come and see. Yes, tick, because that's a result of the volcano. Do you think it's written like a news report? I do. I feel like the students written it like they're on the news, 6 o'clock news, telling us what's happened. The eruption must have been spectacular, and the account shows nature as being mesmerising and beautiful. So we've got 5 ticks there, so we've easily got 4 out of 4. But my concern with this answer is, how long has this taken the student? And you've only got 4 minutes. So underneath, I've rewritten it to show you how those 4 marks could have been achieved in just 2 sentences. So in text B, Angier was demolished as a result of the volcano. Tick. Oh, sorry, my ticks are actually going to come on. Which also caused a tidal wave. Tick. So we've got 2 things that happened in Angier. In text A, the volcano in Iceland forced Johnson to leave his farm for a time. Yes, it did. Tick. And also created a tourist attraction. Tick. So 2 sentences, 4 marks. So as you can see, being waffly doesn't cost marks in terms of you will still get 4 out of 4. But if you've now got to go on and write a 10-mark comparison answer, obviously the student who's written the bottom one with 2 sentences is going to have more time on that than the student who's written the example 3. So even though it won't cost you marks to waffle, it will cost you marks later on when you've got less time on the other question. So bear that in mind. Okay, so you've got a really nice model there if you want to jot that down as an example of a 4 out of 4, if you feel like yours isn't a 4 out of 4. I'm hoping that you are feeling quite confident about this one. These are all the different points that you could have made. So if you want to use this to kind of check your points are accurate, if yours are not the ones in that model. You've got loads of options here. What is it, like about 10 for 4 marks. So plenty of choices. And that's one of the positives about questions 5 and 6. Because there's 2 texts to choose from, you've got so many points to choose from. It's a lot easier in a way than the other 2 10 markers. Okay, so have a look through these. Give yourself a mark out of 4. I'm not going to ask you to submit this work because I'm hoping it's quite straightforward, but please do contact me if you're unsure about whether you could get 4 out of 4, or let me know if there's anything you're not sure about with this question. Okay, so fingers crossed, lots of 4s out of 4s out there. Right, if you want a bit of a break, you can pause now before I move on to the comparison question. All right, so new title is a comparison question. I know we did this last week, so I'm just going to quickly recap the key skills. You've done a quiz on it as well, haven't you? And we did really well, loads. You got 100%, which was made up with. So just reminders, you're looking for 6 to 7 what marks, which is your quotation plus inference. And you're looking for your 3 to 4 how marks, which is your method quotation inference. Okay, you need your connectives, and you can get 2 marks if you say both texts say inference and you have a quotation from each one. Can I just stress that you do need quotations in this question? Questions 1, 3, and 5 are the only ones where you don't need quotations. All right, I don't know if you want to put that in a bubble somewhere, but please don't forget to use quotations again in the comparison question. Okay. Pause there if you want to jot it down, but you should have already jotted that down last week and you've had feedback on it as well. Right, so let's have a look at the question. Let's launch straight in. Both of these texts are about volcanoes that have erupted, so you'll be given a nice little summary of what they're about, which is very useful. And they're asking you to compare what the writers could see and hear of the erupting volcanoes and how they get their experiences across to the readers. It does tell you to use the text to support your comments, so quotations, and to make it clear which text you're referring to. So you've got your what and you've got your how, as always, but the same as the synthesis question. Oh, I don't know if you can hear my cat. We have to keep him in because he's hurt himself and he's really sad and meowing all the time. It's really sad. If you can't hear him, you must be thinking what's going on about. So, as I was saying, what was I saying? What and how? Oh yeah, they'll always ask something really specific. So even though you've got 2 texts to choose from, they don't just want you to pick out random points about the 2 texts. They specifically here want you to look at what could the writers see and hear of the volcanoes. So remember that for text A, the writer is the journalist. So you're looking at what the journalist could see and hear. Excuse me. Not what the farmer could see and hear. Okay, so can you see how precise it is? And you could easily lose marks if you don't really think about it. So please make sure you read the question carefully and do exactly what it asks. And then obviously the how question is slightly different. They want you to focus on how they get their experience across to the readers, not how they describe what they see and hear. So just bear that in mind. It's really, really precise, and it does look like a really straightforward question, but you might fall down if you don't read it carefully. And I've already said about make it clear which text you're referring to. Okay, so I'm just going to model for you again how I would now return to the text, and I'm looking specifically for what the writers can see and hear. Okay, now in text B, the writer is the person who experienced the explosion, isn't it? So that's a little bit more straightforward. I can look at anything that person has said. So this is just one paragraph from the text. Obviously, you've got the whole text to choose from, and it's not as necessary on this one that you do use the whole range of the text, so don't worry about that as much. But these are just the things that you could go back in your exam and just quickly highlight. What can you see? You can see that it's covered in smoke. He can see thick darkness. I know that's not really something you can see, but you know what I mean. He can see a red fiery glare. He can see a shower of ashes. He can see that the sky had a dark, depressing look. So already there you've got 5 things that the writer can see. Okay, and it's focused on the question. Just do a quick highlight, and there's 5 potential points that you can look at. Okay, and I know that's just from one paragraph. You then do the same with the other text. So again, he can see spewing fire. Now, I wanted to say the reason I've chosen this paragraph is because it's very clearly about what the writer saw when he arrived, when he was going to report it, and it was a tourist attraction. So that's why I've chosen this specific paragraph. So we've got spewing power. We've got the ashen black of the ice, which I don't know how many of you have been to Iceland, but it is very shocking when you see the black ice. We've got the sound of the low booms, okay, and we've got the lava exploding. That is something that he could see, okay. Now there are other things in here, and there was other things in there as well that you could have highlighted, so don't feel like they're the only ones. I was just picking out key ones that I felt I could make good inferences from, and you can do the same. So we've got here quite a lot of options, haven't we? We've already got nine quotations that we could talk about for inferences for what marks, which is fantastic. To, you know, this is why this question's really nice. You get to step back and think, well, which ones do I want to use? This shouldn't be a question where you're thinking, oh God, where are my points? All right, crashing to earth as well is that's a sound as well as a sight almost, isn't it? That word crashing. He sees the lava do that. Okay. You could technically say that he sees breathtaking wildness, but I feel like that's really his own interpretation of what he's seeing rather than literally what he's seeing. So that's a dodgy one. Okay, so let's just think then. We've got these two. So if you were going for a both text mark, at this point you'd have a look and see, well, are there any of these that we can kind of link together and say that both writers see or hear the same thing? Now, it's actually not a great one to demonstrate this to you with, because I don't think there is a specific thing here that you could say is exactly the same. You could perhaps link a red fiery glare to spewing fire. However, they are actually quite different, and to say both texts, I don't think you can get the same inference from both of those quotations. Again, shower of ashes with black ice, not quite the same. I know we've got ashen and ashes, but it's not quite the same inference. So unfortunately, and I am kind of giving you a hint here, I do not believe there is a both texts answer for this one. And also, having seen the mark scheme, I know I am correct, because there is no section on the mark scheme for this paper where it says both texts say. Now, that, I think this is the first year that's happened. Last year's there was a both text. The year before that, for 2017, there was a both text. So don't be put off by the possibility of looking for that just because this text doesn't offer you that. But these, I don't think these texts offer you a nice both text say example. Okay, so what I'm also hoping you can see from seeing these two next to each other, and obviously in your exam you'd have them next to each other on the desk, is that there's a very clear difference in how these experiences are conveyed. And of course it makes sense. The text A is a journalist. He feels relatively safe. He's turned up to a tourist attraction. Of course his experience is going to be conveyed very differently to text B, where he's literally seeing a volcano erupted in his own hometown, or near his own town. So really, I'm hoping that you can start straight away now you've highlighted these differences, these different what points, do you already starting to see, oh, there's very clear differences here in how the writers have conveyed their experiences. One is far more personal, one is far more afraid than the other one, who's actually excited. Unimaginable privilege. Can you imagine text B's writer saying it was an unimaginable privilege to watch this happen to his hometown? No. All right, so hopefully that's starting to jump out at you, and I think that's part of the way you can save time in your exam, is being engaged and really thinking as you're going along. Right, well, I'm looking for HAL differences as well, and trying to kind of train your brain to do that. All right, so have a go now at the comparison question, but the same as we did with the synthesis question, if you don't feel ready, then don't pause yet, keep listening, and I'll go through sort of a 5-mark answer with you to give you a bit more guidance. If you do feel ready, pause now and have a go. Oh, sorry, got my lines to get through. Okay, so this one was 5 out of 10. It was band 3. And the reason that they only got band 3 is because they felt there was a lack of focus on the question at times, but there were some relevant details, and there were some method marks in there. So let's have a read. In Sandrik's account, we learned that he has experienced a lot of destruction. It's not very focused immediately, is it? It's not telling us what he saw or heard. We know this when it says the whole town has been swept away. This created fear in Sandrik's eyes and made him believe he might not be able to live another day. So there's a sense there of how his experience is being put across, and also what he saw. He did see the whole town being swept away. However, so we've got our connective, which is great. In the newspaper article by Robbins, we learned that he could smell sulfur in the air. Now, does the question ask what he could smell? No, it asks what he can see or hear. So there's no marks here. So even though they've gone on to say what it suggests, it's irrelevant. Next, we learn that Sandrick's experience with the volcano made it a terrible time for him. Okay, so we're kind of focused on experience, but it's a bit waffly. We know this when it says the volcano's eruption grew very loud and then became deafening. So we're focusing on sounds, and we've got a bit of an inference from terrible times, so they've ticked that. As the eruptions grew and grew, he could see pieces of volcanic rock falling around him. Well, yes, he could, so that's a tick. However, what Robbins experienced was not as bad when we learned that the floods never came, as well as Half's family were allowed to go home. This shows he was lucky to not have witnessed any destruction upon his house. That's a really nice point. The child's engaged with the text, which is brilliant, but they're not at all focused on the question there. You're not allowed to judge whose experience was bad, and it's not really right either, because Robbins's experience was not as bad because he was a journalist going after, like 2 weeks later, and Half's family was not the writer's experience, so that's irrelevant. So that's why they've not given a tick. Can you see as well, I'm hoping you can see, that these ticks are weak ticks in comparison to the ticks I would give you. I'm hoping you could see that I would be ticking in brackets here, and I'd be thinking, well, you've not really pinned down inferences, you've not really pinned down quotations, like to the quotations. So this is another reason this student's only getting 5. They're not quite there with that sentence and that rigorous approach of saying a quotation with an inference. Okay, he goes on, or she. Next, we learn that Sandrick's experience of the volcano was not just affecting him, but also, like many townspeople, I cowered, panic-stricken. This shows that he was not the only person who felt frightened, but everyone around him felt that they could do nothing. However, again, it's just not related to the question, is it? Yes, he felt frightened, and that was his experience, but there's not really a pin down of how he conveys that experience, and it doesn't matter about everyone around him because that's not the question. However, in Robbins' article, we learn that he would stop to take photos because he liked seeing a type of firework, as he described it as being the best firework display on Earth. Again, that's a tick because they are looking for you to spot that as a point. The fact that, like, he describes it as a fireworks display is amazing, is a completely contrasting experience to how Sandrick describes it. But again, it's a weak tick because there's not really an inference there, and there's not really a pin method. This shows that he had experienced what he experienced was not as dangerous as it could have been, but instead it was a magical event. See, I would have ticked there. I feel like she has pinned down magical event with fireworks there. Finally, in Sandrick's article, we learned that he was devastated. I like the word finally, it's a nice way to end. By the volcanic eruption, because it has left many dead bodies. Again, that's something that he saw. However, in Robbins' article, we learned that he did not hate what he had seen, calling it mesmerizing. This shows he saw it as a more positive thing instead of a negative thing. So I think one of the problems with this student is that they've taken to comparing how bad each experience was instead of comparing how each writer talks about their experience. And that's the key problem that's keeping it in band 3. I hope you can see that subtlety. We're not saying things like, however, in Robbins' article, he uses, language such as mesmerizing to suggest he was captivated by this event and his experience was really magical. However, Sandrick uses very blunt vocabulary, many dead bodies, to convey the horror he saw. So you can see the difference in the sort of the way it's expressed and the way it's focused. And that's what's prevented it from getting out of band 3. Okay, so I thought that would be a good one to show you if you were a bit unsure before you start writing, so that you don't make these same mistakes, and that you can try and build on this and make it a bit better if you want to. So pause now if you have not had a go. If you have had a go and you've now listened to this and thought, oh, I might have made some of those mistakes, obviously feel free to pause again and sort of edit what you've already done before you see the next model answer. Okay, so I'm going to show you now an 8 out of 10 answer. So 8 out of 10 is the best that the exam board offered us with this question. So this is the 8 out of 10 answer, and you can see that there's not many ticks for a little while. So I'm just going to read through that bit and explain why. Firstly, both of these writers describe how they witnessed the eruption of the volcano. However, they do it from two different viewpoints. Peter's account takes place 25 miles from the eruption and does not initially find himself directly threatened. However, Robin starts his account by describing his own experience of the eruption while standing only 500 metres away from it. Right, I'm hoping you can see what's wrong there. So what's wrong there is that they've mixed up the texts. Yeah, it's Peter Sandrick, who starts his account by describing his own experience of the eruption. Sandrick is directly threatened by it, isn't he? Because it's his hometown. The other thing is it's very vague, but what's good about it is analysing the fact that one is a lot closer to the event than the other person, the journalist, was actually a really good method mark. It's just they've not pinned that down, unfortunately. Okay, secondly, the writers both describe what they can see. Yes, they do, but that's a wasted sentence. From 25 miles away, while the volcano was in its early stages of eruption, Peter and the other residents of Angier see only a cloud of thick smoke, which did engulf their town at one point. This is quite descriptive, but they've still give that a tick for cloud of thick smoke. So sorry, just to clarify, I know Peter's account is right in terms of it does take place 25 miles away. But they're kind of missing the overall point that he was more threatened throughout the whole thing than Robbins was. Sorry, I don't feel like I said that very clearly. At night, he could see a red glare above the volcano, something else he could see, as if the whole mountain was burning. However, as he is standing much closer, Robbins gives us a highly descriptive account of what he sees. This is nice method. He's really thinking about how the experience is conveyed differently, such as telling us that the crater is spewing fire into the darkening sky. Tick. Again, I hope you can see that these ticks are things that I would give ticks in brackets for. There's no quotation for thick smoke or regular. I think they are actually lifted quotations. So hopefully that reassures you that sometimes the board will just give the tick if it's closely related enough to the text. So 3 ticks so far. Furthermore, both writers describe what they can hear. Yes, they do, but that's an irrelevant point because you've not pinned anything specific. Sandrick describes the sound with a lot more terror in his tone, so we're focused on the method, telling us that the eruptions were deafening. Meanwhile, Robbins describes the noises with an awed tone. Brilliant. That's a really nice phrase and is a great method, describing the sound as a succession of low blooms and a crashing. Now, this paragraph at the top of this page reads far more like a Band 4 student than anything we've read so far. This is focused on method. It's a really good comparison point. Comparing the two ways the writers describe the noises, and they're commenting on language, awed tone, terror in his tone. Moreover, got some brilliant range of connectives in here, haven't we? Both writers use a different tone. Oh dear, they've already said that. But this is now focused on the eruption. So Robbins describes himself as being granted a privilege by seeing the volcano erupt. So we talked about that. That's definitely a key point to draw out. Demonstrating and confirming his odd tone. So nice reference back, but really the tick is for privilege and the fact that he feels that he's been granted this opportunity. Peter Sandrick naturally takes an opposing stance, describing how he cowered panic-stricken at the sound of the volcano, showing us his terror-stricken tone of writing and showing us he would rather have been anywhere else. Rather have been anywhere else really is where they've pinned the inference there. But again, a nice comparison comparing how they both reacted to seeing the volcano. I feel like the Sandrick one could have been pinned down a little bit better. Finally, both writers finish on completely different notes. Robbins leaves the reader, try not to use these kind of, it's almost like topic sentences, isn't it? You don't need them. I'm just worried about your timing. Robbins leaves the reader on a calm note, as he describes eating dinner in this comfortable hotel and feeling like the eruption had seemed like a strange dream. So yes, yeah, it ends calmly. So it's a focus again on how his experience was conveyed. It's conveyed very calmly at the end. While Peter Sandrick describes to the reader the shocking levels of destruction he saw around him following the tsunami. Not really enough there to get another tick. Okay, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 8 ticks. It is a good coherent response. It's very organised, isn't it? And it does focus on sights and sounds, which is really good. And that's definitely something that the exam board will be looking for. Have you answered the question? Have you focused on the question? Have you addressed every part of the question? This person definitely has. You've got 8 marks. I think I probably would have given it 7. So please be assured that I'm a harsh marker. And you know, there is some good commentary on methods there, which is definitely secure in its band 4 position. All right. So hopefully that gives you an insight into your own answer. What I'm going to do now is give you a mark scheme. Oh, my poor cat. I don't know if you can hear him. I hope you can't because it's really traumatic. We're taking in the vets at 4 o'clock. So this is the mark scheme for this question, and I'm just going to skip ahead to show you. Look at how many points you could have got chosen from. So there's just so much. There's like 20 points here, and you obviously only need 10. So hopefully you can see which kind of points you're picking out, which ones are you missing, is there a pattern like we've been doing all along. So what's interesting about this mark scheme is that it actually gives an overview in terms of like, you know, this would be the kind of summary they'd be looking for you to make to get the band 5. So the fact that they've both got first-hand accounts, remember we talked about first person and using the first person style as a method on Monday in lesson 1. So we've got first-hand accounts from both of them, and that's a kind of that's a method that you could have drawn out of both. And then also, obviously, the key overview that I would expect you to write is that obviously Robin's experience was really positive, whereas Sandrick's was really negative. And of course, that's because the volcano impacted on Sandrick personally. So that was the kind of summary they were looking for you to get. If you haven't written that as an overview, then I think it's worth adding it on in green pen, because I do think it's kind of that's your top mark answer, someone who's just able to draw that out and say this is the key difference in their experience. And then you've got all these options to choose from the mark scheme. So obviously pause on each slide and go through and have a look and take up your own answer. People who are sending me the work today are the people who haven't been listed so far this week. So it's everyone else essentially. So please do send me your work after you've marked and ticked it up. I don't mind if you've ticked something incorrectly. I don't mind if you've not ticked something that deserves a tick. That's the whole point. I want to check and see and give you feedback on it. Okay, I'm going to stop there. This ends our walking talking mock for paper 2. So Monday is going to be a feedback lesson and a kind of consolidation lesson. Can I ask you to get in touch if there's anything you want me to go back over again? Because if not, I'm going to move on after Monday to return to writing. You should have all had your revision pack now for September, and I do want to spend a couple of weeks, if not a bit longer, going over how to write an article, letter and a speech. Obviously spend longer on letters and articles because we've done fewer lessons on those. All right. So please get in touch, because I hate the thought of you sat at home going, I don't get this, it's too hard to follow, etc. Please let me know, because I'll call you on Teams if I have to and make sure you get it. All right, this is really important, and I don't want you to feel like you're going to end year 10 not knowing how to handle paper 2 section A. All right, it is 30%. Please talk to me and let me help you. Okay, take care guys, and have a lovely weekend when it comes.